Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we engineer a path for you through all the information overload. If you're serious about being truly well-informed, you know it takes more than just absorbing facts. It requires vigilance. Vigilance against every force trying to bend or distort your perception of reality.
And those forces can be external, like a powerful personality or, new technology.
Or they can be deeply internal, right inside your own mind.
Today, we're basically providing a map of that cognitive battleground. Our mission is to take four really disparate areas and weave them together for you.
Okay, what have we got?
We're talking charismatic leadership tactics, the new cognitive threats from AI, the ancient philosophical practice of self-mastery, and then the cold, hard logic of specific brain circuits.
That's a very eclectic mix.
It is. But we're pulling from corporate strategy, deep psychology, advanced neurobiology, and even some practical digital tools to build a single, actionable blueprint.
I think this is going to connect some dots for you. We'll start with a classic example of reality manipulation, the infamous reality distortion field.
Then we're going to show you how AI has kind of weaponized that distortion and turned it inward against your own confidence.
Finally, we'll get into the blueprints, we're calling it psychotexture, that you can use to, reprogram your own mind for resilience. So let's start with that classic distortion field, the RDF.
Right.
The term was coined, back in 1981 by Bud Tribble. It was to describe Steve Jobs and his ability to push the Macintosh team past what they thought was possible.
It's a personal force field, really. Mm-hmm. It's this calculated, potent mix of bravado, charm, passionate hyperbole.
And sheer persistence.
Exactly. The leader uses it to persuade teams to achieve these seemingly impossible goals. Jobs is the archetype, but you see it with others.
Like Henry Ford, maybe Elon Musk.
For sure, you see similar personal forces at play.
And the reason the RDF works isn't just because the leader is charming, right? It taps into a core human psychological trait.
It does. The illusion of control.
The illusion of control.
Exactly. It's a pervasive cognitive bias. This tendency we all have to systematically overestimate how much influence our personal behavior has on things.
On outcomes that are fundamentally uncontrollable.
Right. We feel like we're steering the ship, even when the results are random or governed by outside forces.
And the research shows that this illusion is strongest when we're personally involved, when we're acting more often to get the outcome.
Yes. So a charismatic leader like Jobs, using that RDF, wasn't just convincing you of the impossible, he was capitalizing on your innate desire to believe your hard work matters, letting you believe that if you just push hard enough, you can beat reality.
A fantastic tool for organizational change because it bent external reality market forces, tech limits, to the will of the leader.
Precisely. But here's the massive shift we're facing now. AI has introduced a distortion that bends inward.
That sounds terrifying. How does AI distort our internal reality?
We're calling it the illusion of the lift. Instead of bending the market, AI warps your metacognition.
Metacognition. So thinking about your own thinking.
Your ability to think accurately about your own thinking. Yeah. When you use AI tools to augment tasks, people across the board start moving toward this state of systemic overconfidence.
So if I'm using an AI assistant to, say, draft a document or solve a complex problem, I start believing that I'm smarter or more confident than I actually am.
That's it. Simply because the end result was flawless. And that's fascinating because it completely changes how we assess talent.
It flattens the classic Dunning-Kruger curve.
It does. Historically, low performers overestimate their ability, high performers often underestimate theirs. But with the illusion of the lift, the AI convinces everyone they're rising faster than their actual skill level dictates. It's like universal cognitive magnification.
It masks your deficits. It makes objective self-assessment incredibly difficult.
And when you look at the economics, this fragility in self-assessment, it has massive global implications.
How so?
Human intelligence, in its raw form, already represents somewhere between, say, 55 and 65% of the world's GDP.
That's about $50 trillion.
About 50 trillion, yeah. And these new AI supercomputers, these AI factories, are generating tokens designed to augment that opportunity. But if the augmentation just makes us feel more confident without actually building robust, non-AI dependent skills.
Yeah, no, we've built a $50 trillion structure on a foundation of sand.
You have. And that fragility leads directly to what's known as the liar's dividend.
Okay, what's that?
It's just that the generative capacity of AI means misinformation can be spread so easily, so convincingly, that the truth itself starts to feel, irrelevant, perpetually unclear.
And deepfakes give instant, plausible deniability. That wasn't me, it was is AI.
Exactly. It challenges our core reliance on visual evidence. When the chain of custody for digital media is broken, how do you find invariant truths? It's a societal crisis that flows directly from the very tech that claims to be augmenting us.
That's a profound challenge. So if we can't trust external reality or even our own assessment of our competence,
The only reliable recourse is to take control of your core internal programming.
which brings us to the architecture of the self, or as you call it, psychitecture.
Psychitecture. It's about self-directed psychological evolution. The deliberate, thoughtful reprogramming of your own psychological operating system.
It sounds modern, but you're saying the practice is actually ancient?
It's ancient. We know Aristotle, the Stoics, the Buddha, they all instructed their students to consciously focus on constructing their character and optimizing their minds for resilience.
So the goal isn't just productivity or goal completion, which is what a lot of modern self-help seems to focus on.
No, the true goal of this inner work is wisdom.
And wisdom is practical insight.
Practical insight. It's knowing what's fundamentally good for you and then forming your goals based on rational, deeply insightful beliefs. We're so focused on execution, on setting and pursuing goals, that we don't spend nearly enough time ensuring they're the right goals in the first place.
Right. If you're extremely efficient at climbing the wrong ladder, that efficiency is ultimately worthless.
Psychitecture requires that value insight before the execution.
I think when a lot of people hear self-mastery, they immediately think of, well, suffering. There's this pervasive cultural idea that true behavioral self-mastery requires a lot of emotional pain, like discipline requires self-flagellation.
And that is a critical error. It's a self-limiting belief. It's rooted in this assumption that you have to sacrifice your emotional well-being to get behavioral control.
Or that being content makes you complacent.
Right, that contentment leads to inaction.
Yeah.
Our sources argue the exact opposite. There is no fundamental reason we can't pursue both behavioral mastery and emotional mastery at the same time.
So we don't have to suffer to achieve greatness. It feels counterintuitive to the narrative we're all sold.
It's counterintuitive because we're taught to only value the achievement, the end goal. Psychitecture suggests finding satisfaction not just in the completion of goals, but deeply in the pursuit of them.
So you design the steps along the way to be enjoyable.
And sustainable and aligned with your values. Then the whole process becomes inherently motivating, not just some painful slog you endure for a future payoff.
Okay, so if we accept that we can and should reprogram our internal OS for this balanced pursuit, what's the fundamental tool? How do we do it?
The tool is cognitive restructuring. It's a practical framework for identifying and changing your distorted thought patterns.
How does it work?
It's pretty straightforward. First, you keep a log of undesirable emotions, anything from, say, minor frustration to severe anxiety.
Wait, let me pause you there. Why lug a minor annoyance? Shouldn't we just focus on the big emotional crises?
Because the small, repetitive patterns are the most insidious. They create the noise that drains your ACC, your brain's decision-making center. So you log the emotion. Then the second step is noting the triggering situation, and this is crucial. This specific chain of thoughts that immediately preceded that emotion. You want to capture the internal monologue.
So not just, I felt angry because my colleague was late.
Right.
The thought chain might be, my colleague being late means they don't respect me, which means I'm not valued here, which means I might fail.
Precisely. That thought chain is the bad emotional algorithm. The third step is to identify the pattern, the distortion like catastrophizing or mind reading, and then practice a rational rebuttal.
And over time, you internalize that new adaptive response until it's second nature.
It takes effort, but you are literally rewriting your core scripts.
And as we build this new internal architecture, we have to calibrate our confidence correctly, right? We just talked about the illusion of the lift, where AI makes us too confident.
Yes, and this is where self-efficacy comes in.
Which is your belief in your capacity to do something.
To execute the tasks you need to produce a specific outcome.
Yeah.
When self-efficacy is low, we avoid tasks. When it's significantly beyond our actual ability, like with that AI-fueled lift, it leads to reckless overestimation.
So what's the sweet spot for maximum growth?
The optimal level is when your self-efficacy is positioned slightly above your actual ability.
Just slightly above.
That's the ideal gap. It encourages you to tackle challenging tasks, gives you the motivational spark you need, but without setting you up for delusional, catastrophic failure. You need to believe you can succeed, but not so much that you stop preparing.
That slight overestimation pulls you toward growth. Okay, let's go deeper. Let's move from the psychological architecture down to the underlying physiological machinery.
To the brain's control center.
The anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC. This is our hub for iteration, decision, and value representation.
The ECC is essential. Think of it as the brain's chief error corrector and feedback mechanism. It helps you recognize a mistake and adjust your future behavior. And our sources show that even within this small area, specific neural circuits govern critical aspects of our behavior.
How we engage socially and how we maintain focus.
Exactly. Let's look at social behavior first, based on this interneuron research. It shows that different cells in the ACC play very different roles in our social habits. So we looked at two similar types of inhibitory brain cells, parvalbumin, or PV, and somatostatin, SST neurons. If you temporarily increase the activity of the SST neurons, the animal becomes less sociable. But once that activity goes back to normal, the social preference quickly restores.
So it's like a temporary dimmer switch for social engagement.
It is, but the other kind, PV internals, show a completely different result.
How so?
When you activate those PV internals, the reduction in sociability is much more profound, and crucially, it does not recover back to baseline quickly.
So that suggests the PV circuit governs deep, lasting tendencies for sociability, while the SST circuit just manages momentary social preference.
That's the principle. Subtle neural differences dictate whether behavioral shift is temporary or fundamental.
And that's a critical insight for psychotecture. We need to know if our efforts are creating temporary preference changes or lasting foundational changes in our wiring.
Exactly. And the ACC is also involved in core self-control and sustained engagement. There are specialized neurons that project to the ACC, we could just call them ACCP neurons, and their activity is tightly linked to our ability to focus.
And what do these ACCP neurons tell us about high performance?
Well, elevated activity in these neurons helps reduce impulsive errors in demanding tasks. So they help you stop reacting impulsively, essential for self-control.
But there's a catch.
There's a catch. That same elevated activity is also correlated with higher miss rates behavioral lapses. It suggests there's a delicate balance.
The circuitry that makes you stop and think deeply, which reduces impulse, might also contribute to mental fatigue, causing you to momentarily check out.
The same brain activity that gives you focus also demands rest. It's a closed system. And in fact, the source material notes this ACCP activity promotes NREM sleep and reduces sound-evoked awakening.
So deep engagement and deep rest are two sides of the same coin. You can't maximize one without respecting the needs of the other.
You can't. The focused engagement you need for psychotecture requires intentional disengagement too.
Now let's get even more granular. Performance optimization at the level of sensory processing. We have these findings in the visual cortex V1, which show how important extremely precise timing is.
Right. The specific finding here is that if you selectively activate those PV interneurons in the visual cortex, but you restrict that activation to a tiny window, the first fraction of a second after a visual stimulus,
Like just a flash.
you dramatically improve visual discrimination performance.
So fast inhibition is the key to clarity.
Yes. The enhancement was achieved primarily because the brain significantly decreased the false alarm rate while keeping a high success rate. The PV interneurons act as inhibitory gatekeepers. They reduce the neural noise right at the start of the perception process.
It's not just about boosting the signal, it's about perfectly timed inhibition, silencing the noise before it even starts to confuse the system.
That's it.
That is the perfect physiological connection for our final segment. We've gone from external distortion to internal architecture to the neural hardware. But all that control falls apart if the inputs we feed our brain are pure chaos. We have to talk about digital organization as cognitive hygiene.
We simply can't ignore the sheer volume of data. I mean, the second largest search engine in the world is YouTube.
And its default subscription system is a total cognitive drain.
It's a disaster. Once you hit 2 or even 3-digit subscription numbers, that feed becomes a randomized, overwhelming fire hose of low-value decisions. Every single scroll costs you mental energy.
And if the ACC is our error corrector, and we know that we need precise inhibition to optimize focus, then throwing chaos at it multiple times a day is just a self-sabotaging strategy.
It is. The solution we found is implementing structural control through a dedicated tool. We look at the Pocket Tube extension, which provides the missing structure.
The core function lets you group your channels into custom, context-based collections.
Right, so you build filters like e-focus, clean first name, or quick weekend project. You're not scrolling a universal list. You're asking, what task am I doing right now? and then opening the corresponding filter.
And for power users, there's a smart folders feature that acts like automated cognitive hygiene.
It does. You can create rules, for instance. Rule: video duration is less than 5 minutes. Automatically goes into a quick breaks folder. You are pre-sorting the information by your capacity for it, not by YouTube's algorithm.
It integrates your workflow beautifully. Instead of that infinite scroll that just drains your decision-making capacity, you make one high-level decision. I have 30 minutes for deep work, and open a curated, low-noise folder.
You're applying that principle of targeted inhibition to your digital inputs.
The only technical note is for those with massive libraries, and we're talking over 1,000 channels. The mobile app can struggle with API restrictions.
Yeah, loading can be slow. But the desktop extension has workarounds, and you can sync your data via Google Drive. The key is that the tool acts as a functional layer of architecture for your digital life.
This has been a huge deep dive. We started with the external distortion fields of charismatic leaders and AI, moved through the internal evolution of architecture, and went all the way down to the specific, precise neural circuits that govern engagement and performance.
We've seen that true resilience requires building an internal architecture that can withstand both the persuasive leader and the insidious AI, which are both constantly trying to warp your sense of reality and competence. So I want to leave you with one final thought about the pursuit of knowledge and greatness, especially when you're faced with all this constant flux and pressure.
Okay, let's unpack this anecdote.
It comes from the physicist Richard Feynman. Early in his career, he was offered this prestigious job, and he immediately felt immense pressure.
The expectation to be brilliant.
Exactly. The expectation to achieve great things, to be wonderful. He realized he was trying to work on what others thought he should accomplish, and the pressure had paralyzed him. So he made a conscious decision. He relaxed. He decided he wasn't responsible for what anyone else expected. He decided he would pursue physics only for the fun of it, just to play.
He consciously ignored the external reality distortion field of expectation.
He did. That same afternoon, he was in the cafeteria watching a student throw a plate into the air. The plate was wobbling. And just for the sheer enjoyment of solving the puzzle, he started working out the equations of the wobble. No importance, no career pressure attached.
Just playing.
Just playing. That playful, consequence-free exploration, born from ignoring the pressure of perceived importance, led him directly into the theoretical problem of the rotation of the electron spin, which became his Nobel Prize-winning work.
That is a staggering lesson in the power of removing anxiety from the process of discovery.
So the final thought is this. If the highest achievements, the deepest insights, can be unlocked by just engaging in joyful, consequence-free exploration, how might you integrate that play-first mindset into your own search for wisdom, especially when you're facing all this AI-driven anxiety and relentless information flux?
That's the final piece of your internal architecture to build. We'll see you next time.